Hey there, this is Renessa Boley Layne, and I want to welcome you to another conversation on creating your perfect work. If you follow me, then you know my entire life's mission is to equip you to discover, design, and get highly paid doing work you love, whether that means radically changing careers, launching a business, or bringing your big idea to life. So today, we are going to talk about leadership blind spots. We're going to get real about the things that you may be doing that keep you from being recognized, remembered, and recommended for the opportunities that you desperately crave. And so, have you ever wished like you could have someone just sit down and shake you and be like, this is what you need to do? If you've ever felt that way, then today is your day, because today's guest, Felicia R. Davis, this beautiful woman who is sharing the screen with me, she is going to give it to you straight. She's going to pull back the curtain and she's going to give us the insider secrets on how we need to show up as leaders in our career, in our business, or just our individual contribution to get highly paid doing work we love. So Felicia, I'm excited to have you here. And I'd like you just briefly, because you can tell your story better than anybody else, but just briefly, let the audience know what you do. Because there's a reason why I brought her on screen. I'll tell y'all why. But I want to give her the moment just to kind of share the work that she does in the branding space and how she elevates women in that space.
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you so much, Renessa. It's an honor to be here. I'm so excited that you invited me to be a part of this amazing experience. And I love when I have an opportunity to not only share my story, but share from my experience, because my background is in HR. I spent about 26 years in HR before I hung up my corporate handcuffs, I like to say, almost 10 years ago. And what I took from those 26 years working in HR, what I do with women now is I really help them. I call it branding their brilliance, but at the core of it is all about perfect positioning.
Yeah.
Because what I found is that there were a lot of very smart and talented women who got passed over and had absolutely nothing to do with their skills and their ability, and everything to do with their inability to properly position themselves for the next bold move.
Absolutely.
And so that's the work that I do in a nutshell.
Yeah, and that's the reason why I brought her here. Like there are a lot of folks who teach branding, and I'm a firm believer in branding. And oftentimes we can think about the mechanics of branding. What does my website look like? My colors? What does my LinkedIn profile say? All those kinds of things. But at the core, branding really is about positioning. How you're how you're positioning yourself to the marketplace, and how the marketplace perceives you. And there are things that we do consciously and unconsciously that impact how people perceive us. And at the end of the day, it does not matter how hard we work. It doesn't matter how talented we are. It doesn't matter how many degrees we have. If we are not perceived as leadership material, if we're not perceived as the go-to person who can deliver to this client or whatnot, the marketplace will not pay. They won't pay in promotion. They won't pay in revenue. They won't pay, in all the ways that the marketplace plays. And so I love the angle that Felicia brings to the conversation, because she gets to the core of who you are and all of that. So that's why I really promote her work, and we'll talk a little bit more about how you can access some of her work later on. But today in this conversation, like I said, we're going to talk about leadership blind spots. And it doesn't matter if you're in a career or if you're in a business. It doesn't matter how successful or where you are up the chain, because the things that she talks about, I see in women all across the spectrum, from just starting out as an assistant or an analyst or whatever, to at SVP and EVP level. So what she's going to talk about is gold. But before we even get into kind of the meat of that, I always love to open up the conversation, because this is all about perfect work. And perfect work isn't perfectionism. It isn't, without challenge and without risk. When I say perfect work, I mean that you're doing the work that that you're meant to contribute in the marketplace. It lights you up. You're leveraging your talents. You're making the difference that you want to make. And so, Felicia, how do you know that the work that you're doing right now is aligned to your perfect work?
Well, the way that I know that is because I'm a product of my work, right? And so, like I said, I spent 26 years in HR, and not only did I see women who were passed over, but I was also that woman too, right? Until I got, until I got tired of looking out the window, blaming everyone else, looking for excuses, and instead I looked in the mirror and said, "Okay, Felicia, you got to turn the mirror on yourself and get in the driver's seat." And
Mhm.
the way that I know is that it's purpose aligned is because the results, people are just like when people go through the programs and they actually do the work
Yeah.
without excuses, remove the masks, right? They get the results that they come to get. I'm only a vessel to provide them some tools and resources. As long as you come into it saying, "Hey, I have nowhere to hide.
Mhm.
I have nothing to lose, and I'm coming to get what I need to get so that I can continue to inspire and incite change with the people who rely upon me for guidance."
Yeah, absolutely. So you talk a lot in your work about being seen as a commodity and the challenge that women have being seen as a commodity. And that's a term that I had not heard, quite frankly, within the space of kind of career advancement, leadership, business and such. So I'm so super curious, what do you mean by commodity? And what have you seen in the women that you work with that would suggest that most women end up playing in the commodity space as opposed to really positioning themselves to stand out and advance?
Well, one of the key clues that would give you some insight of whether you're playing whether it's a commodity level or a mediocre level is if you're unable to quantify the value that you bring to the table, right? Oftentimes, and specifically as women leaders, we come to the table with all of the niceties, but if we don't really know how to really talk about how we help money drop down to the bottom line, which is what as a business, that's what we care, what we care about. If we don't know how to articulate that and demonstrate it, then we're seen as an easily replaced commodity,
Mhm.
right? And so when I'm working with women, I have a formula that I've developed to help them really um, call that out, so they have a lot of signature stories that talk about not only the projects that they're involved in, but also the results and the economic impact, how it impacts the bottom line to the organization. And if we don't know how to talk about that with confidence, with clarity, with precision, then we end up getting left behind.
I think it's such a valuable point because as soon as you started talking about being able to quantify, your impact on the bottom line, I can imagine there's a lot of women who are saying, but I do make a difference on the bottom line. Like because if you're putting together the resume is always about how do you quantify your impact, blah, blah, blah. So there's probably women who are thinking I do that. But the issue isn't do you do it? The issue is does the marketplace, and whether that's hiring manager, leadership team, executive team, whatever, do they perceive that you
Right,
impact the bottom line? Do they
right.
know? Because oftentimes we're doing the work, but we're not getting visibility for the work. And I actually literally have a client that I am working with, and I want to share it because this happens at the whole spectrum of levels.
It
She's at
really
the
does.
SVP level, and her goal is she's like, I'm trying to get to EVP. I don't understand why I'm not at EVP. And in their company, they're going through all kinds of changes. And her boss literally said, well, we want to put you in a position where if you leave, the company would really miss you. And she was like, now that's an odd thing to say, because that would suggest that they wouldn't miss me today, right?
Mhm,
She's like, what you
mhm.
mean that if I leave, they should. And so the point was that, and this woman is $400,000 a year salary. And so as good as she is and has as much of an impact as she's had on the bottom line, there was still a question of perception as to whether or not she was contributing at that level, which meant that there was some kind of breakdown somewhere that value was not being received on the other side, or acknowledged or recognized or remembered or whatever, right? So what
Right.
she said, so that in that sense, and is as bad of a woman as she is,
Mm-hmm.
in that situation, she is being viewed as a commodity, and one that when we
Exactly.
hit the chopping block with all that salary, we could save that by giving her
Right.
a package, right? And so
Exactly.
that's why this conversation is going to become critically important. So you say, Felicia, that there are 3 things critical for a woman to elevate in her leadership. That like there's 3 areas that they really need to master. You talk about reputation, you talk about relationship, and you
Mm-hmm.
talk about results.
Yeah.
Expand on that so that we understand why those 3 elements, and there's lots of things under those elements, obviously, but why are those the 3 pillars on which you hang your branding and positioning hat?
Yeah, those are the 3 core pillars because your reputation is what gets you known, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your relationships are what gets you access, and your results are what gets you paid.
Mm-hmm.
And so I like to say if you can anchor anything that you're doing inside of those 3 pillars, whatever ascension looks like for you, no matter what it looks like, because it looks different for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever ascension looks like for you, it will never, ever, ever be a problem. Now, when you marry that against having high stakes conversations, so you talk about being a commodity player, the way that I help you eliminate being a commodity player is I help women really engage in high stakes conversations that move beyond the mediocre level that a lot of women really engage in. A lot of women, a lot of women leaders, I shouldn't say a lot, but some women leaders, particularly those that come to me for guidance, really find themselves in a place where they are really having very surface level conversations. They're not raising the bar on the conversations. And so when you're stuck in surface level conversations, you seem to be a part of the mediocre crowd.
Mm-hmm.
In order to lift that up, you've got to engage in high stakes conversations. We have a whole tool and a template and a process that we take them through to help them to understand how to engage in those conversations, to come out of that conversation knowing how to execute on a plan, a strategic plan based upon those conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell me again, because I wrote it down and then missed it. You said you were talking about reputation, relationship, and results. And I'm asking again because there's some people who missed it, and I need y'all to write it down. It's a tweetable
Mm-hmm.
moment that she just said. You said reputation gives you access. And you said results get you paid. I missed the middle one. So give it to us again
Yep.
so that nobody else is missing it.
Yep. So reputation gets you known.
Oh,
Relationships get you access,
perfect. Okay.
and results get you paid.
Okay. So y'all, we could cut the interview short right here. That point by itself, that's all you need to know. Reputation gets you known. And that's important because if you don't have, so sometimes people think it's kind of like credit, right? You can have bad credit, good credit, or no credit. Having no credit is probably worse than having bad credit, right? Because
Right,
you're not known. That's not, I'm not
right,
advocating bad credit, but I'm saying.
right, right,
And so a
right,
lot of times in our work, even in our business, we are unknown. We don't have a reputation. People don't know us for anything. But your reputation is what gets you known.
yeah,
And it doesn't mean that someone has to know you. They
right,
simply have to know of you and
right,
have some perception of you. And people will make that judgment in a split second, right? Which is why your LinkedIn and some of these, your website, all those things become important as well, because that adds to the reputation when someone doesn't have a relationship with you. But the reputation gets you known, the relationships get you access. And so for
yeah,
us, DIYers, the people that are on the island all by themselves, those reputations become critical because those are the things that open doors. And then the results absolutely all day long will get you paid.
yeah,
The certification doesn't
absolutely.
get you paid. The degree doesn't necessarily get you paid. The results will. I just think that's such an important point.
Now, one thing I want to make sure I punctuate here, Renessa, when we talk about reputation, because it's very important that the women or the audience that's engaging in this conversation, it's important that they understand that while your reputation is what gets you known, you know, it's important that you not allow your values to be compromised, right?
Yeah.
Because you're trying to people please.
Oh, that's very
So
good.
to your point around reputation, it's either going to be good or it's going to be bad. There's no in between.
Yeah.
It's going to be good or bad, right? But the thing that we want to make sure that people not allowed to happen is allow their values to be compromised because they're so concerned about their reputation.
No.
So you follow what I'm saying
No.
there?
No, it's that, and it's a delicate balance, right?
Yeah.
And at some point, everyone is going to be at a place where they have to make a real decision around that. Am I going to
Right.
stand on my value at what I think might be the expense of an opportunity or something like that? And in those moments, am I going to trust, standing in the value and trust that in doing so, whatever circumstance is going to turn out right, by me.
Yeah, I just want to say there's this one thing that I talk about called the double bind dilemma. And I don't know if you've heard of that, but it's where you are, for women in particular, you're damned if you do, you're doomed if you don't, right? And so that's where that whole reputation piece, where that fine line and having a good balance between whether you're going to be respected
Yeah.
or liked, or whether you're going to have both, right?
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. So let's move into the blind spots, right? So there are areas that there are areas that many women are not aware of that affect their ability, again, to be recognized, to be remembered, and to be recommended for opportunities that elevate them. And so a lot of these blind spots tie back to the very things that we just talked about: reputation, relationship, and results. But I really want to, because we've got time with Felicia, I want her to unpack each one of these. And I think for a lot of you, some of them are going to surprise you, and you're going to actually resonate with it because you're like, yeah, this is what I'm struggling with, or man, this has not been a priority for me, or man, this could be the ticket, for me. So I want you I invite you to pay attention. But one of the things you talk about, Felicia, is this idea of having an identity crisis, where women are uneasy about their leadership brand and their leadership messaging. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so an identity crisis, a really good example that I love to give with this particular piece. Let's just imagine that you are going for your next bold move. You and your current boss, you've been in conversation, they've been grooming you for it. You're ready, something's coming down the pipe, but before before it actually comes down the pipe, your boss leaves the company.
Does that not happen? Who can relate to that one? Yeah.
Right. And so while you've been prepping and planning and preparing with your boss, now your boss is out of the picture. And if your ability to still rise up to the level of being at least a key player for that position is faltered, then you have an identity crisis, right? Which is a key part around the reputation and relationships, because that means, number one, your reputation isn't known good enough and your relationships aren't built well enough. Right? And when that happens, you have what I call an identity crisis. And so you really got to get very, very intentional around. That's why relationships are so very important. To your point, Renessa, relationships are so very important. And you got to be able to really expand them both vertically and horizontally throughout the organization, but not only throughout the organization, but outside of the organization as well.
Yeah. It's critical. And I think the challenge for a lot of women too, and I'm glad you used that point. And it's not just women, men go through this as well, but this conversation is for us.
Right.
But I think a lot of times there's a comfort zone with a relationship that we have, or a boss that is an advocate. And we can take too much comfort in that, and we can put all of our eggs in that basket. And the reality is that things change and people's circumstances change. And I remember when I was in my corporate role, and I was, you're going through your half yearly performance review or whatnot. And at the time I had a female boss, and when she was giving me at that 6-month mark, because the promotions came up at the end of the year, she was like, yeah, you do great work, but the feedback has been that nobody knows you. Not enough
Yeah.
people know you, because at
Yeah.
at the promotion table, it's not just my boss who's advocating, it's the other people who need to co-sign with her
Right.
perspective. And I was not one who liked to get visible. I didn't like I didn't like to mess around with a whole lot of people. But the reality is, if I wanted to get, promoted to director or whatever that next level was, other people had to know, and I had to have an identity with them. Like, they needed to
Mm-hmm.
be able to say, "Ooh, this is what she's about," right? And so if that's a space where you are not strong, that's an opportunity for you to start to put some investments in. You also talk about voice confusion, and the idea that we're not communicating with authority in our areas of expertise, or we're not communicating with authority our impact. Tell us more about what you mean by that.
Yeah, so from that perspective, I really, really hone in on having the voice of a thought leader.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I mean by that is being clear on what you are a stand for, being clear on your values and your boundaries, and having a clear and compelling narrative around that thing that you're standing for. And there are two questions that I always tell women that you must know the answer to in order to really, really start to formulate your thought leadership, which is really around your narrative around what you believe, right? And that first question is, what do you believe about the future success of your industry, right? And then when you're clear around what you believe about the future success of your industry, okay, the next and more important question is, what will your role be in making it happen?
Mm-hmm.
And so when you can have clear and compelling answers around those two questions, that will start to formulate your narrative and your thought leadership, and voice confusion will no longer be a problem, because everything that you talk about will be aligned around those key narratives, and that's what you become known for, and eventually that's what you become known as.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. It is about taking a stand.
Mm-hmm.
And when you take a stand or have a stand, that is what's going to differentiate you from your competition. If you are an
Mm-hmm.
entrepreneur, that's critical for you.
Mm-hmm.
That your stand differentiates you from the sea of other people that are doing work that you do. Like, I speak, I coach, all that, but coaches are a dime a dozen. And I'll say
Right.
that coaches are a dime a business coach, success coach, life coach, career, dime a dozen.
Right.
What's different about how you deliver and what your stand is, such that your perfect customer, your ideal customer, will choose you all day long in a lineup of other people? And
Yeah.
I will often ask my, the first question I'll ask someone if I'm having a strategy session with them, or, prospect, I said, well, you could choose anyone that, to connect with on your career business side. What motivated you to choose me? They will inevitably say, because you said I could get highly paid. Because my stand is, get highly paid to do work you love. I don't believe in dream job and broke. I don't believe in, and that's not for everybody, right? But
Right.
my
Right.
ideal client is the one who's like, I want to get highly paid for this dream. I want this career, business, whatever. I want, money is important to them, right? And so that became my stand. And it wasn't, I'm a career coach or this or that. Again, dime a dozen. Lots of great people out there doing great stuff. But
Mm-hmm.
so it's important in the company, and definitely as an entrepreneur, that you know what you stand for in your product or service, because that's going to allow you to serve the people you want to serve. And then they're going to be able to easily identify you, because you're not there to serve everybody.
Right.
That's not your job.
Right.
You are there to
Right.
serve a select crew of folk who are going to resonate with what you bring to the table. But you
And
got
I like to
to
say, in fact, I would like to say that, in fact, to kind of punctuate your point, Renessa, the reason why you want to be clear around what you stand for is because you want to attract the right people, and you also want to repel the
That's
people
right.
who you're not supposed to be working with.
Yep.
And, one of the questions that I always ask people when they schedule a strategy session with me is, why should anyone be led by you?
That's a great question. Wow.
Why should anyone be led by you?
Wow. What a
And
great
when you can,
question.
when you can answer that question, knowing that it has nothing to do with you really, and everything about the people that you serve, right?
Yeah.
And you're really, really in a powerful place for really helping to start to shape your narrative and your thought leadership.
Oh, that's awesome. That's a beautiful question. That's a beautiful question. And I'm gonna steal your word, punctuate. I'm gonna start using
Yeah.
that.
Go ahead, girl.
Steal that word. So the third thing you talk about is visibility paralysis. This idea that women are laying low and they're staying on the sidelines. They're not in the game, and that is a contributing factor that's preventing them from getting the kind of recognition and advancement that they want. Break that down for us.
Yeah, I think this goes back to like, it's like your the way that you rolled in corporate was the exact same way that I rolled. I was always a high performer, but because I am a deep, deep, deep introvert, I like working quietly behind the scenes, and that started to get in my way, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I knew that that was a problem for me, and I learned how to nip it in the bud, and that starts with really developing a visibility campaign.
Mm-hmm.
And what we do is we help women develop 90-day visibility campaigns that are called catalytic, meaning that they are not just any visibility campaign. They are visibility initiatives that actually position you for your next bold move. So you're here, you want to get here, whatever that project is in between, once you successfully get on the end of that project, you're going to be ripe and ready for your next bold move.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's important that we always have, over the course of a year, we should have at least three to four big rocks, one each quarter, right?
Mm-hmm.
A big project that we're working on, that at the end of successfully completing that project, you're going to be not only positioned for the next bold move, but you're going to actually have a high level of visibility, a higher level of credibility, and absolutely a higher level of impact.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. I have anything to add to that because anything to that. Visibility is so key. So I said I didn't have any, I guess I do. But let me punctuate Felicia's point, because visibility is everything.
It is.
It's everything. It doesn't matter how good you are, how smart you are, it's everything. And
if you're the best kept secret, you're no good, right? It's like you have no use if you're the best kept secret in your industry, in your organization, then you're doing something wrong.
Yeah, I like that. I'm taking notes, y'all. I hope y'all taking notes. But so the next thing you talk about is having is a lack of brand ambassadors. So not having the kinds of relationships, the sponsorships, the champions that can advocate for you and open doors for you. And I'm sure this goes without saying, but I'm going to let you unpack that for folks as to why that's critical and what you need to do about it.
Yeah, so it's exactly what you said, Renessa. It's like having those key relationships with people who are going to not only open doors for you, but who are also going to advocate for you when you're not in the room. Mm-hmm. People who are going to stand in the gap for you when you need them to stand in the gap for you.
Yeah.
Having people who are going to make introductions for you. People who are going to rally behind you, having mentors, sponsors, and all those different types of key relationships are so important because I'll tell you, roughly about 80% of my business is based on relationships, right? Mm-hmm. It's based on building those key relationships and having introductions that help me, that minimize my ability to have to always be in hustle mode.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right?
Yep. And if you are an entrepreneur, this is critical too.
Yeah.
Because, there's this perception that that entrepreneurship is about the hustle. And it really isn't. It's about the build. It's about the strategic build. And the relationships and the ambassadors that are in your space are the ones that can help you turn your hustle into a build. And for a lot of us, that's a challenge. And for me, that was a particular challenge, to overcome. And it's an area that I continue to grow in. in fostering those kinds of relationships and being able to give to them and all of that in a way, because that's what makes it fun. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, life has its own sense of struggle, but there is no need for unnecessary suffering. And
Yeah.
so doing it on
Yeah.
your own is unnecessary suffering. And sometimes
Yeah.
you see people climbing a ladder and they're not better than you. They're not more talented than you. They're not more hardworking, but they still got what they deserved because they
Mhm.
leveraged some aspects that perhaps you may not be leveraging. And so we start feeling some kind of way about, well, why did Jack get it? Why did so and so get it? We're comparing the wrong metrics though.
Mhm.
And so they got what they supposed to got because they played the game the right way. And some of
Right.
us, this is the opportunity for you to start to see how to play the game. Because if you play
Yeah,
in the wrong way, it don't matter how well you play the game, you play it the wrong way, right?
right.
So
And I also want to make sure that I point out that there's definitely a time where you're going to have to work a little harder. Just think
absolutely,
about what we're in the midst of now. We're in the midst of a pandemic. We're in the midst of a racial uprising. And so specifically, whether you are working in corporate or whether you are an entrepreneur, there are different phases of a pandemic. And
yeah,
based upon those phases of a pandemic and an uprising, you have to know how to answer the call.
that's
You
true.
have to know how to be nimble and flex.
Yep,
And if you're not accustomed to doing that, then yes, you're going to have to work a little bit harder to really either pivot
mm-hmm.
or reposition or rebrand or
Mm-hmm.
refocus or re-strategize, right? There is a time for that. But for the most part, you should be constantly in a place where you're building relationships where even in the process of having to work a little bit harder, you still have those key relationships
Yep,
that you can leverage,
yep,
people that you can call, who can make introductions for you,
yep.
right?
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because that's how Felicia and I were connected.
Yeah.
Another speaker, Gloria, who spoke just spoke so highly of Felicia. She's like, Felicia is a wizardess, and I was like, what? So literally, when I reached out to Felicia, I said, Gloria said you are a wizardess. That's exactly what I said. And so it may have been a relationship or a door that would not have opened otherwise. Who knows? She may have opened
Right.
cold, but she may not have. But the fact that Gloria said made all the difference in the world. And when
Mm-hmm.
I reached out to Gloria because Sheila said that you should talk to
Mm-hmm.
Gloria. And when I sent the message to Gloria, Gloria said, well, if Sheila said that I should do it, then I have to do it. Right.
Right.
And so
Right.
those relationships become key. And the relationship that started it was the relationship with Sheila. I had
Mm-hmm.
been supporting her work and supporting her conferences for years. That was
Mm-hmm.
the first time I'd ever asked her of anything. But in doing that, it was a string of three amazing women that have come together to really be able to support you in a great way. So
Yeah.
that ambassadorship is really, really key. So we'll move on. You said another thing you talk about ROI and credibility creation. What does that mean and why is that critical? And why could that be a blind spot for folks?
Yeah, so that gets back to really operating at a commodity with a commodity level mindset,
Mm-hmm.
mediocrity, and not being able to truly demonstrate, articulate, and quantify the value that you bring to the table, right? And so when we get stuck in the spokes of not being able to do that, then we are looked at as a commodity, someone who could be replaced easily, just like your client. It's I think it's amazing that she actually had that light bulb, said,
Mm-hmm.
whoa,
Yeah,
well,
she did.
well if he's saying that, that must mean that I'm not seen as someone who's bringing enough value to the table,
Mm-hmm.
right? I think that in and of itself, having that level of awareness is
Yeah,
amazing,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so that's what credibility and ROI creation is all about, making sure that in the midst of building those relationships, that um, you're also packing them with things that really truly demonstrate the value that you bring to the table,
Yeah.
right? And one of the ways that I typically do that, I always speak more from an entrepreneurial space now because that's what I am, but whenever I am working on a client project, there's always going to be another level of wow that I'm going to inject into that project that they had no expectation of, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when that happens, I do that without expectation, but knowing that it's also building something for me that has me stand out from all of my other competitors and people who are probably looking on the sidelines, waiting to get in and take my spot.
Mm-hmm.
I'm constantly building that into the relationship so that I can keep it solidified.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I love that. In fact, I love that. And in every one of these conversations, I bring these conversations to the women, but I bring the conversation because I want people that I can learn from as well. And that is my takeaway is, making sure that you inject another level of wow. And people think about over deliver this and that, but there's a way to be really deliberate about how can I go over the top in a way that you wouldn't expect. How can I surprise and delight?
Right,
Dazzle
right.
is my word. How do I dazzle you? But that requires being intentional. It's not just enough to deliver on what you promise, but then when you can dazzle somebody, oh my gosh, that's a whole nother level.
It's a whole nother level. And not only that, sometimes that ignite and excite piece or that dazzle and wow piece, it doesn't even necessarily have to be something that you're recreating. It's something that you already have in your toolbox.
Yep.
But you're adding it on as an extra layer to demonstrate how you are different from all the other people who do this same work that you do.
Yep, absolutely. And I'll give just an example for folks of something that happened to me. I remember a few years back, I had a business coach, and I was pregnant at the time, and I lost the baby. And I remember I shared it with her because it was impacting our meeting time or something like that. And I didn't think anything of it. And maybe the next day, she had sent me this beautiful bouquet of flowers. There were white lilies, it was something. They were beautiful. And obviously it was a sympathy card, and it was very appropriate, but it stood out to me because she could have easily just said, oh, my condolences, I'm so sorry. And I would have been totally fine with that, didn't have any expectations. But that she went above and beyond, that left such an indelible mark on me about who she was as a coach, who she was as a leader, someone that I would follow and recommend to the ends of the earth, because she injected that level of wow, which was care, right? And I was like, that's how I want my clients to feel. So when my client had come out of surgery or whatever, I was like, let me send flowers, let me do something. And she was totally surprised by it. But it was because I want her to know that beyond the business, I care about her life, right? But that came because somebody else demonstrated that to me. And I'm sitting here and it was Jessica Riverson. And if y'all have ever heard of her, Google her, follow her. But I'm sitting here talking about that to hundreds of thousands of women because of the impression that left, and that was beyond business. And so take that. So now there's a couple more practical tips here that I think were just golden that I want you to be able to run through real quick as it relates to blind spots. Okay. One of the things that you talk about, with women, that women go into meetings with a commodity level conversation. And you hinted to this earlier, but I want you to really break it down, because I think a lot of folks go into conversations at commodity level and don't even know. You just trying to survive the meeting and not get called out or not say something stupid. But why do we need to up level how we show up in these opportunities?
Well, I think first of all, you've got to understand the agenda of the people that are going to be in that meeting, specifically the people that you need to influence. And in order for you to understand that agenda, you've got to have a meeting before the meeting. Right? Yep. And oftentimes we don't do that because sometimes, I get it. I worked in corporate for a long time, not just in HR, but just as an employee as well. I get it. Sometimes you're just like, look, I'm just going through the motions. I just want to get through this meeting. I just want to get through this day. But you have to understand that comes at a cost, right? And if that's a cost that you're willing to sacrifice, then it's okay. But just know that it's really a cost that's really placing a ding on your brand, if you will. and how people perceive you as a leader.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you really want to go into these meetings at a very, very high level, number one, understand the agenda of the key people who are going to be in the room. You got to have that conversation before the conversation. And after you understand their agenda, then say, hey, this is what I'm thinking about bringing to the table. Just want to get your thoughts. Like, have that conversation before the meeting so that when you're in the meeting, you're feeling fully supported. You're feeling much more confident. You're feeling, now, before I go too far with that, make sure you have those conversations with people who you trust. Because sometimes people will take your ideas and run with them. And if that happens, you got to know how to very strategically be able to grab that back. But the point is that you've got to stop going into meetings just based on someone sending you an agenda and saying, hey, show up, right? Be more intentional around how you're going to show up in the meetings. And specifically when there are other women in the meeting, make sure that you are finding a place to really amplify their words, amplify their input, encourage their input, and so on and so forth. And so that's what I mean by that.
Yeah, and the way you say it is understanding the agenda behind the agenda. And so, going into having a conversation with your boss, having a conversation with your boss's boss, like, hey, I know we're having this big meeting. I'm looking forward to participating in that. Help me understand what's driving XYZ. Like, what do we need to know about XYZ? And it might just be 5 minutes of conversation where you're asking, hey, I really want to contribute some things to this. And I just have some questions around what was driving this so that I could be better prepared or what have you. And that can be scary. It could be, you could be insecure about it. You might not do it scared, Go ahead and do it. Because again, just one comment, one statement, one profound sense of insight, and now you're a cut above the rest of the folks that are just in there taking notes on stuff that they're not going to do anything about later, right? And so the last bit here is really, really important. It's about asking for what you really need to succeed. And I think this is critical. And I'm gonna let you just land a plane with that one. But tell us why that's so critical.
Yeah, so, we actually just did a series called When Black Women Speak. And part of that series was I was closing out the series with a session called Being the Cleanup Woman. And what I mean by that is oftentimes as Black women, they will bring us in to clean up something that is just a complete mess. And we say yes to it without insulating ourselves with something that's going to help us land softly on the other end, whether it works or not. And so what that means is before you say yes, first understand all the conditions around that. I say the answer to any problem is always in the question. So when you go into those high stakes type of conversations, you got to be prepared with some high stakes types of questions so that you can really, really unpack what's really, really going on that they will not tell you unless you ask openly, right?
Yeah.
Then when you have clarity around the full spectrum around what's going on, right? Then you can make a very, very conscious decision whether that's something that you want to step into. And if it is, then you have to really, really think very, very critically around, okay, what is it that I need to succeed with this project?
Yeah.
And not only, you don't stop there, you get clear around what you need to succeed, but you also have to negotiate your soft landing spot. So if it doesn't work, once there's a tolerance for risk, for you to take some risks with doing some things, right? But if it doesn't work, you want to make sure that you're taken care of on the other side of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And so that's what I mean by asking for what you need and what you want to succeed.
Yeah. I see that a lot. I see that literally. I'm having that conversation with a client, amazing woman, great technical background, great technical skills. And she's been in the position where she's been the cleanup woman. She's coming into these jacked up projects because they know she's got the talent. And then she's expected to go and work a miracle. And she puts her superwoman cape on and she goes and she works a miracle. But she doesn't have the bandwidth, the resources, the support, the knowledge base, and all of that for it to be set up for success. She's kind of clawing her way through the success. And so now she's,
Not to mention her mental health is now being completely compromised.
exactly. But part of that is we are responsible for negotiating what we need. We're responsible for getting the buy-in from our bosses and, all of that, stakeholders, to be like, this is what y'all are committed to providing me at the onset. Because once you're in the thing, it's hard to go back and start to change the terms of the contract, right?
It's
You can't
hard.
do that. You gotta think about that stuff in advance, because once you in it, now your reputation is at stake for being able to deliver, right? So,
And I like to say you got to look beyond the dollars to get to the diamonds. So don't be so glossed over by this compensation package that you're not really really mining for the gold and the diamonds to really understand, okay, what else do I need to really, that's really going to set me up for success, because I'm clear around the high risks that I'm going into. Like, this is a very, not only high visibility project, but it has a high level of risk for me, for the company, right? And so you got to be clear around what you need. And don't be so fast to say yes because they flash some dollars in front of you.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. This has been awesome, Felicia, and I appreciate every single nugget that you have shared with us. I've learned, and I can, it's safe to say that there's so many other women on this call who have learned from you as well. And so I appreciate you sharing your wisdom, your insights, your experiences with us. She has a free gift for y'all. And so we want to make sure you get access to that. So I'm going to open the floor, and Felicia, you can talk about what it is. Folks, you are able to, right here on the page down at the bottom, you'll see a link where you can click on that and get access to it. And I encourage you to do so, because in getting access to what she's providing, you will also get access to her, and you'll be able to follow her work, and you'll be able to follow her offerings, because you need folks who can help you get to the top. And I'm a firm believer in showcasing, folks who are a force for good in doing that. So let me open the floor to you, Felicia. Tell us what we got, and then we'll close it out.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, first of all, for allowing me to share on your platform with your audience. I really appreciate it. And I think the most meaningful gift that I can offer is we have this program called Brand Your Brilliance, and we've been doing it. This year actually marks our 7th year running this program. It's a 10-day part heart, part strategy, very intensive workshop. And so what I want to offer is day one of that workshop to them, because I want them to really get a taste around them, not only what it means to really brand your brilliance and the impact that it has, but specifically as it relates to the times that we're in now. Day one is really gonna, whether you decide to take the full workshop or not, day one is really gonna set the foundation for you to show up as we continue to navigate into the new normal, for you to show with confidence, with clarity, and with ease. And so I'm going to give you access to day one of the Brand Your Brilliance course.
Okay, so y'all go get day one of Brand Your Brilliance course. And again, Felicia, I'm excited to have you here. And on behalf of Felicia and myself, we want to wish you every success and happiness. We wish you your dreams. We wish you your career. We wish you leadership. We wish you oodles and oodles of clients who love what you do. But take good care, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.